Hello everyone, I'm Patty Siegel, your host of the Route 422 Business Advisor Show. We're here today with David Morrison from Medicare Education Services, and we're looking forward to interviewing Dave. Hi Dave, how are you?
Good day, Patty. I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on this beautiful day. So your background is in teaching, and you have your master's in education?
That is correct.
Yeah, that makes for a very good educator. So how is that helpful as you help people with Medicare?
That's a great question. I look at teaching as just a transfer of information. And the more clear and concise you can be at transferring that information, the better for me and my clients will retain that. So I find it's very helpful in my current role at Medicare Education Services to be able to talk to people, ask questions about them specifically, and really listen to them and be able to deliver content back to them in a clear, concise fashion.
Excellent, excellent. So I see that you're appointed with many different Medicare insurance carriers.
That is correct.
How
Yes.
does that influence people's decisions?
So, good question. So when someone is eligible for Medicare or maybe looking to make changes, they have a lot of choices in terms of where to go, in terms of what carriers to choose and what plans are best for them. So dealing with someone like me who is an independent broker, I'm appointed with almost all the carriers, so I can really have a conversation about things that are important to them, whether it's cost, whether it's access to certain doctors, whether it's cost on their prescriptions, and really make sure that they are in the most cost-effective plan for them, regardless of their carrier. So I can give you an example of someone I met with earlier this year.
Sure.
She was in a great program. I've enrolled people in that program a lot, but it wasn't necessarily the best program for her. So when I sat down and talked to her, she had a specialist doctor who she really liked to go to, but wasn't in network with her current plan. So when she went there, she had to go every 6 weeks. She was paying a cash price of almost $200 when she went there. In addition to that, she was paying a lot for her prescription. So we did a review, was able to find a plan with a different carrier that had that doctor in network and also saved her around $1,500 per year just on her prescriptions.
Wow,
so
that's
it was
huge.
just a great savings for her.
Yeah.
So, and not to say the plan she was in was bad, but it wasn't the right plan for her.
Yeah. So so how does your competition, do they have as many carriers, or do you find that you have more carriers just because you find it's nice for all the people?
I don't know exactly what my competition does in terms of independent brokers and how many carriers they're appointed with. However, I would say that some brokers are appointed or just what they would call captive agents, meaning they're only with one carrier. So if that is the case, I always tell people, even if you choose not to do business with me, it's very important to find an independent broker so they can shop across many carriers and find the best value for you.
Sure, absolutely, makes sense. So along with adding those who turn 65, you also work with parents of adult children with intellectual disabilities. And can you share with our audience a bit more about this and how that process works?
Sure. It's actually a very personal story for me. I have a brother who's autistic. And long before I was in the Medicare business, I was the person that was helping him. Oftentimes, and I kind of learned as we went along. I didn't know anything about Medicare at that point in time, so as things were coming in the mail, we were learning together.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes when someone starts collecting Social Security disability, and that is the triggering event for anyone, whether it's an intellectual or physical disability, to get Medicare, the triggering event is collecting Social Security disability insurance, also known as SSDI.
Okay.
Not SSI or supplemental security income. There's difference there, so I just want to make sure that it's clear. But once someone starts collecting Social Security disability insurance, 2 years after that, they get automatically enrolled in Medicare. So oftentimes, and it happened with me and my brother, we just get stuff in the mail and say, "Oh, welcome to Medicare."
Oh, okay.
And you're like, "Oh, I didn't sign up for this. How did this happen? I don't know." So all of a sudden, people have a lot of changes going on with their health insurance that they didn't necessarily choose, because most of those people are on Medicaid at that point in time. So they get this Medicare welcome packet, and they're like, "I don't know what to do." So that's where I come in. I can kind of guide them through, okay, this is what this means. These are your plan choices. This is what you can do, and try to find them the most robust health care for them, similar to what I would do with anyone else that doesn't, that doesn't have an intellectual or physical disability. So we would just do an intake and try to find the best, most robust coverage for them.
Yeah, it's good to have somebody like you, because I do hear sometimes from people that are entering into these times that it can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that people have, typically if people have an intellectual disability, they qualify for a waiver program in this, through the state. And that just gives them some extra benefits. So people really want to be cautious about not losing services. So my goal is to never sit down with somebody so they lose service. I just want to make sure they get all the services that they're entitled to, and hopefully make their programs more robust.
Yeah, and save them money in the long
Yes.
run, which is huge. So tell us how you sign up and the costs associated with Medicare.
So most people are familiar with the red, white, and blue card. And if you're not, if you get Medicare, you're going to get a red, white, and blue card. And on that card, it's going to say Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. And that's what you get from the government. That's the piece that comes from the government. And you either get that when you turn 65, or if you collect Social Security disability pre-65.
Okay.
So if you enroll in those two things, Part A is typically no cost to people as long as they've worked for 10 years in their life, or they call it 40 quarters, but 10 years. Part B, there is typically a premium. This year in 2022, it's $170.10. And the good news is, and this was just released last week, so maybe this is good news for people, the Part B deductible, or the Part B premium is going down next year.
Oh, nice.
To $164.90. So if you hadn't
What
heard
was
that before, it was $170.10.
Okay.
It's going down to $164.90 per month. So that's good news, and that comes directly from Medicare. And typically, if people are collecting Social Security, that gets deducted right from their Social Security check. So they never really even see it coming. It just happens automatically in the background.
Yeah.
So that is step one, getting Medicare Part A and Part B. And then that's really where I step in, is I will sit down with somebody and talk to them about their choices, whether it's a Medicare supplement plan, a Medicare prescription drug plan, or a Medicare Advantage plan. And those types of things all work a little different, and that's why I do a thorough intake with my clients to see what's important to them and figure out what program is the best for them.
Nice, very nice. So let's say I sit down with you and I find out what program is the best for me. What is involved in signing up then?
Good. So as an insurance broker, I sit down with people, I take their applications. It's a pretty simple process, actually. Once we've identified the programs that work for them, really, if you were sitting down with me right now and say, sign me up for Medicare, and you knew exactly, we talked and you knew exactly what you wanted, it would take 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So typically, and that would be for an in-person consultation.
Yeah.
Now sometimes, especially now, either due to COVID reasons, people don't want me to do an in-home consultation. We do it over the phone or over Zoom. And then that way, I can either email somebody an application or even just text it to them, and they can just authorize it over the phone, which is crazy, but with technology. But it's pretty simple.
It's easier to do that.
Yeah.
I see that. Yeah. So let me just ask: are supplements, drug plans, and Medicare Advantage plans part of the process?
So people don't have to have those things. You don't have to have a supplement. You don't have to have a drug plan, and you don't have. So that would be one path. So people basically have two paths. They can go supplement and drug plan, or they can go Medicare Advantage plan. So those are their two choices. You don't have to do either one of those choices. However, if you stick with just Part A and Part B, you will have a lot of exposure in terms of costs. So people want to be able to fill those gaps in, and that's why we'd have the discussion about what side of things, or supplement, drug plan, or Medicare Advantage plan would work best for those specific clients.
Okay, super, super. So not only are you passionate about teaching and education, the ins and outs of Medicare, you are also devoted to helping local organizations and communities. Can you just share with our audience a little bit about this?
Yeah,
You're a member of a lot of different organizations.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Tri-County Chamber of Commerce. I'm being inducted into the Pottstown Rotary here in a couple weeks as part of just being part of the community. As a business, Medicare Education Services, we partner with a lot of different area nonprofits to help bring Medicare education to their clients. So places like the Pottstown Cluster of Religious Organizations, Bethel Church, the Phoenixville Area Community Services. Those are just some of the some of the areas that we partner and try to make sure their clients have access to great Medicare information.
Right.
And then personally, in addition to that, I volunteer for a nonprofit called Integrate for Good. And that is a nonprofit that specializes and really targets helping people with intellectual or physical disabilities gain equitable access to jobs and just different things in the community. So I'm the vice president of that. And if I can,
very nice, yeah.
Shameless plug, we're having a gala at the Tullamore Country Club on November 3rd. So if anyone would like to go to integrateforgood.org and
Where's
purchase.
that going to be?
The Tullamore Country Club. I'd be lying to tell you if I knew exactly what town it is, but it's I believe it's closer to the Philadelphia area.
Okay. Nice.
But so yeah, the tickets are there, and then part of that event, former flyer Brian Propp is our keynote speaker. So he's going to talk a little bit about, well, I don't know exactly what he's going to talk about, but inclusion and overcoming obstacles.
Okay, super. So the enrollment period's coming up. I know we're almost in it, October 15th to December 7th.
Correct.
So I guess you're gearing up for the big
We are.
season?
So that annual enrollment period, or that window, is for most people the only time per year that they can make changes to either their prescription drug plan or their Medicare Advantage plan. So it's really important to do reviews either for your doctors and make sure they're still in network with your plan if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, or your prescription drug plan to make sure you're in the most cost-effective prescription plan for you and your prescriptions. And I'll kind of give you an example. I have had a gentleman reach out to me, it was probably April timeframe last year, had a prescription drug plan. He's like, I think I'm paying too much for my drugs. So I did a review for him, and he thought because he was paying for a very expensive drug plan that would be the most, his drugs would be lower cost. And when reality is, I told him, I can't do anything for you right now because we're not in an annual enrollment window.
Yeah.
However, when it comes, if you had set this up right for next year, your plan's going to go from about $100 a month to around $8 per month.
Woo!
And
Big change.
Yeah, and your drugs are going to cost you less on the cheaper plan. And he was like, how does that work? And I just said, well, each company and each plan has its own list of drugs. They call it a formulary. And they place those drugs on what they call tiers. So tier 1 is going to be the least expensive, up to tier 5, which is going to be the most expensive. And when you go carrier to carrier, sometimes those drugs switch tiers. And if they switch tiers from one plan, it might be on a tier 3. Just a different carrier might be on a tier 2, and that automatically, just that change is going to save people money. So as people are thinking over the course of the year, did my prescription regimen change this year? If it did, that's really a good time to think, hey, I need to have a review of my prescription drug plan to make sure it's most cost effective for me.
And I'm sure it's always good to have a review anyway, just so that people can have peace of mind.
True, I do that all the time actually. You know, there's a lot of people I sit down with, we do a review and I just sit there and say, you're in the right plan.
Yeah.
And that's great for them because then they haven't been overpaying last year.
Good customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, this has been very informative. Is there anything else that you would want viewers to know about the Medicare process?
I would just say that a couple things. Number one, if you do enroll in Part A and Part B, I had a client that said, I chatted with him right after he enrolled. I met him, and he said, yeah, I'm all set. And I said, well, what does that mean?
Good question.
And he said, well, I have A and B. And he didn't have a prescription drug plan, and through a conversation and a consultation, enrolled him in a prescription drug plan, and then his drugs went from, they weren't expensive, they were $20 a month, down to $0 because it was a tier 1 prescription and it cost him nothing. So that's one thing I would say is just always even if you choose not to participate in a drug plan or anything else, just do a review so you know what your options are. You know, I tell people all the time, my Medicare Education Service, my tagline is know your choices. And I just want people to know what's available to them. At the end of the day, it's up to them to make a decision for them and what's good for them. So, that would be one thing I would tell people. And another thing I like to tell people is you get hit, seniors and Medicare beneficiaries get hit with a lot of marketing, whether it's famous people on TV, whether it's things in the mail, or whether it's phone calls. So I always like to address that and say, number one, you'll never get a call from Medicare trying to sell you or switch you a plan. So if you get a call from somebody that is indicating that they're somehow affiliated with Medicare, they are not, and you don't. You could just hang up the phone.
Good to know.
So I had a client that I met, I had a client who I saw in public about a couple months ago. He's like, Dave, I messed up. I'm like, what do you mean you messed up? Somebody called me and I switched my plan. And I go through a long process to try to make sure my clients are in the right plan. I was like, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they called and said all this stuff. And then they said, oh, I had to change my doctors, but they're going to help me change my doctors, which they didn't. They sold him the plan and just disappeared.
Oh, no.
And he's like, can you help me? And I tried to help him and just fix it for him, which luckily we were able to pull some strings and get that done.
Good.
However, he was just sold something that wasn't true on the phone and then never get a hold of those people again. So I tell people all the time, hang up the phone.
Well, it's good to know that, because you would think that maybe if someone's cold calling.
Yep, and they're not supposed to do that.
They're not supposed to do that. Okay.
Yeah, and then the mail, I tell people all the time, I have one client in particular who gets very overwhelmed with the mail, which is real mail, which is fake mail. So probably about every 3 months, we sit down and go through his mail. And most, 95% of it is just junk.
Yeah.
And so we're able to just sift through that and make sure that he's not missing out on anything because it gets mixed in with just the junk.
Excellent, yeah.
So I like to be a resource for my clients in that way. So if people out there, if you're getting those phone calls or you're getting that mail, you're like, oh, you see something on TV, you're like, that sounds too good to be true. You can just call me and I can do a review. I'm a local guy. I pick up the phone. I'm here to serve the community in the greater Tri-County area.
Excellent, excellent. So I also wanted to add that, good information, Dave, by the way.
No, thank you.
So Dave was on the cover of the 422 Business Advisor this month in October, and it's a fabulous story. You can read it online, 422bizmag.com, or you can just read the story if you have a personal copy. So how do we contact you?
Great. So you can call me. My phone number is 484-424-5222. If I don't answer the phone, it's because I'm either talking to somebody like this, either a Medicare beneficiary or an interview. So that's the first way. You can go to my website, which is MedicareEducationServices.com. And there's a button right on the front page that says Let's Talk.
Okay, nice.
So you can just click that. Just a couple fields, you fill that out, it'll get sent to me, and then I'll be able to reach out to you and see, how I might be able to help you. Or you can just send me an email as well at David.
Excellent.
David at MedicareEducationServices.com.
And I see you also have a YouTube channel?
I do. If you just search Medicare Education Services, YouTube, my channel will come up there. So on that, I have a couple of client testimonial videos and just a couple other videos of me talking about some different Medicare points that people might find important to them.
Yeah, sure.
So I try to do that as a resource for people. And that, I think so many times in the world, insurance agents are nameless and faceless, and for me, I want to be the name and I want to be the face for people, so then they know if something comes up. And I tell people all the time, it is insurance. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things get a little messed up. I want to be the resource there to be able to help them and help them walk through that process and fix it for them.
Excellent. So if you have Medicare needs, questions, or if you're coming into that age where you want to do your homework, Dave is the guy to call. And Dave, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.